Now, moving ahead, and before I start the next session, just a quick reminder, in case you are posting on your social media channels, please make sure that you are tagging Construction Week across LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And the hashtag that you would like to follow would be #LeadersKSA. So that would be a quick reminder. Now, moving on, earlier today we heard from experts about the opportunities for new companies moving their base to Saudi Arabia and how entertainment projects are evolving in the country. And like I rightfully said, how the sun is shining bright on the entertainment sector in Saudi Arabia. Now we will shift our attention to the housing market in the kingdom and understand from our industry leaders about how Saudi Arabia is creating more affordable housing projects for its citizens. To take this conversation forward, I would like to welcome our panelists on this panel discussion. First up, we have Fouad Khoury, Vice President and Senior Programs Director at Parsons. Fouad is leading Parsons' flagship infrastructure housing program with the Ministry of Municipal, Rural Affairs and Housing. Please put your hands together for Fouad, everyone. Now, joining Fouad on the panel is Kaveh Samsamy, Partner, Development Management at Knight Frank. Kaveh has an extensive knowledge in master plan, mixed-use communities, high-density residential developments, and greenfield residential villa community projects. Please give a big round of applause to Kaveh as well, everyone. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the panel discussion today, gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I know we discussed about entertainment projects and more opportunities coming out of Saudi Arabia for new companies. It is also an important time to be discussing about the affordable housing market in the kingdom, and where better than the Leaders KSA Summit. So taking our conversation forward and starting off the discussion, we know that Saudi Arabia is forging ahead with the development of the construction sector as well as multi-billion-dollar giga projects across the country. But that also brings a point that there is a need for more affordable housing projects in the region. And we know that although it is getting better, there are still struggles in the market, and the sector is facing these struggles as well. So let's bring our discussion forward and understand what are some of the current opportunities as well as challenges in the affordable housing market? Let's start with you first, Fouad.
Okay. The Ministry of Housing went a long way from its establishment back in 2011. At that time, they rolled several projects in terms of infrastructure on the ministry lands. Yeah. And later on, there was back about 2016, 2017, there was a shift in the strategy, and the ministry became more a legislative for the housing ministries, and they took a different strategy, and that strategy paid off at the end of the day. And we can go in details later on and on. Some of the challenges that I see is with this high supply and demand. Of course, Saudis are waiting to own their houses. You know, the government tried to create, and the ministry tried to create the supply, yeah. And therefore you end up with some situation where an increase in supply, an increase in housing cause availability of utilities to support these communities and these projects all across Saudi Arabia. So you have sometimes the Saudi Electric Company find some challenges in some communities where the project is happening there, and they cannot instantly provide the power, and therefore the ministry went over with the ministry hand in hand through agreements to work together and map up where the community is going to be, and work with the Saudi Electric Company to project and plan to have power to these communities, and therefore you can solve that problem. Sometimes they may go into some temporary power until the electricity is ready from generators and temporary line and so forth. These are one challenge. The other challenge is the Saudi citizens themselves. They are not used to certain housing products. For example, I give you an example is if you go, for example, to Kharj, they would prefer more a house or a villa versus an apartment.
Yeah.
Similar in Tabuk up north. On the contrary, in Jeddah, Riyadh, Dammam, they will accept apartment, mid-rise, high-rise building apartment, and it's not an issue for them. So that is a challenge as well with them. Also, some of the challenge may be to the awareness of the people, of the citizens. We need to let them know about new technologies, about new materials, new construction methodologies. Sometimes they expect to have the traditional house with a concrete wall and the cement and all that, yet there's a lot of technology out there in the world that can provide a nice house, functional house, energy efficient house, and long-lasting house, but it's a little bit different than what they're used to. So awareness and understanding of that can help the ministries to market and to provide those houses, and then for the citizens to go and buy and accept that product that they want.
Very rightfully put there, Fouad. And Kaveh, I want to come to you and understand. I know you were also agreeing to what Fouad said about, awareness and creating more awareness among the citizens. But from a housing specialist perspective, and I know you work rigorously to understand how we can solve the challenges in KSA for the affordable housing market. What is your take on both the opportunities as well as the challenges that the sector is facing?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at it from a developer perspective, one of the critical challenges right now, especially in the major cities, is land prices. You see, when land prices rise, it really puts pressure on the affordable housing market because you do not have the ability to simply increase your unit price as a developer to match the increase in land price. You're capped at a certain price as per the MoMA regulations to make the housing affordable. So now in the land acquisition market as an affordable housing developer, I'm competing with a market rate developer, and this is a competition I will not win. So rising land prices is a huge issue, especially in the more urban markets. Following on what Fouad said in terms of typology, this I think is probably the most critical challenge. The bottom line is that, and this is proven as per international best practices, simply the quantum of affordable housing that Saudi Arabia needs, it is almost impossible from a infrastructure, cost, land, all perspectives to deliver low-density villas for everybody. It's just not going to happen. In fact, the percentage of housing typologies that have to have density is going to have to go to near 100% very soon in order to meet the quotas. And this poses huge challenges, not only culturally, in terms of some of the Saudi nationals expecting the villa, but we also have to take into account household size. The average household size for a Saudi national family right now is 5.5. To give you an idea, in Western Europe, it's under 1.5. It's not even close. So how can I put a 5.5 household size in an apartment? I'd have to build a penthouse. So it's not just the cultural understanding, it's also the reality of the household size. How can we build an intelligently designed unit, some sort of an innovative townhome product, some sort of a duplex, something that achieves enough density that I can then, the more units I put on the land, the lower the land cost per unit. As Fouad said, I can accept new construction technologies. The infrastructure is less of an issue. This is, I think, the most critical challenge, is the gap between the household size, cultural understanding, and the reality of what we can build. And then I think the third issue for affordable housing, very simply, is that, and this is, again, very different from international markets, the vast majority of affordable housing that's built in developed countries is for rent. It's not for sale. And the Saudi model has chosen to go for sale and to increase home ownership. This can be done, but it hasn't really been done elsewhere. And so, we need to be careful when we apply sort of best practices. And the Saudi ministries are very good at asking, bring me international best practices. We can do that. But you have to understand that the entire affordable housing model in Western markets is built on a for-rent model. And if you're going to increase home ownership in the affordable housing sector, it's a very different business model, and it has its own sort of challenges and opportunities.
That's right. And talking about the housing size as well as purchasing opportunities for citizens in the country, I would like to reflect back on what you just said, Kaveh, and understand, like, is the KSA affordable housing market going to be affected likely by the reduction in housing sizes over the next 10 years? What is your opinion on that, and how do you think it's going to impact purchasing power of the citizens there?
Yeah, I mean, the anticipated reduction in household size will obviously have a massive effect because that's going to just increase the demand for housing. I think what's critical, though, is when we look at the affordable segment, we have to be careful and not overgeneralizing. The reduction in household size will first hit the middle to upper income Saudis. I think it will take more time for it to affect the lower income Saudis. Cultural change is always, they have more access to sort of international markets, Western, more interaction with expats. The income is higher, allowing me to perhaps have an independent home as opposed to living with family. So the reduction in household size will affect the affordable sector, but I think the bigger effect in the short term is on the middle to upper income sector. And even a reduction of 5.5 to 4.5, you're still triple what you see in the Western markets. So that imbalance is still going to be there.
You just spoke about the cultural change and the cultural shift in people's mindset, and that brings me back to what you said in the first question about how there needs to be awareness, but people need to also change their mindsets towards what they're accepting. So do you think that with this in place, are the challenges more persistent for the housing market in Saudi Arabia, or have you seen the challenges evolve, I would say, for that matter, in the sector?
I think right now with a lot of young Saudis in the market, a lot of them went outside, visited other countries, lived, studied, and so forth. They have appreciation and understanding of the different housing products or structures and material. They lived in something different and they like it. Now when they come back here, they're more accepting to what's being offered. And you need to tailor those to young Saudis versus older families where they still have the old traditional way of living. Now, young Saudis can also accept smaller apartments, especially newlywed, maybe with one child, that they can accept, they can save during the next 5, 6, 10 years. To upgrade later when they have more kids to a bigger house, they can save. So there's a lot of that happening, and I think it's healthy and it can if it's managed and with the expectation, it can lead to good results. I agree as well that the supply is huge and the demand is huge, and therefore we have to be careful how to tailor it in order to include the majority. And again, the ministry, through its strategy of diversifications, is not going to say, yes, I'm going to build a house for you. As we see, they have a lot of products that tailor to different segments of the society. Somebody may have an old house, they can help him find a loan to renovate his house, and therefore they found a solution. Building on land and his own land, giving loans, assisting with other things in terms of financial, subsidies for interest rate and VAT, helping the military, helping the teachers, and so forth. Through that diversity, they were able to close the gap. As I remember, before 2016, there was 1.5 million applicants for housing. Now, after 2020, that thing was reduced drastically, and we have, according to the Ministry of Housing, data, over 1.1 million of housing products already in the market being used by this, and therefore that gap is smaller.
Yeah.
However, that gap's going to go back again between now and 2030. And there's going to be another pressure and another, what he talked about is now you have to find what other solutions, technology, things you need to do in order to keep up and close that gap. So by 2030, according to the Vision 2030, you'll have 70% or more homeowner occupancy.
Coming to you, Kaveh, and reflecting on what Fouad just said, what do you think are some of the key factors that would help us, bridge this gap? I know the gap is being bridged, but then we need to do more, here. And what do you think would be some of the factors that can help us?
Yeah, I think the critical thing is that we need to understand what is the development delivery business model for affordable housing.
Yeah.
Traditionally, it's been the government builds. This is how it was in Western markets 30, 40, 50 years ago. The critical difference between sort of international markets and Saudi is that actually the vast majority of affordable housing in Western markets is not built by the government, and it's not built by the private sector. It's built by the nonprofit sector. And we don't have an active nonprofit sector anywhere in the GCC. The closest thing we have is an international NGO. About 60% of affordable housing in the United States is now built by nonprofit developers. So is that a solution to explore potentially? That's one sort of option. Private sector developers do not typically get involved in affordable housing in Western markets because private sector developers are strictly built on a for-profit model. Real estate's a very competitive industry. So in the Saudi model, the government is trying to involve the private sector. The way that sort of interaction happens, I think, is going to be the key to either the success or the failure. There is no way the government itself can build this quantum. How can we get private sector developers enticed enough to build the affordable housing at a decent quality, at a way that they can still stay in business? Yes, of course, right now there's tons of incentives out there and they're trying, but I think the scale needs to expand. The other issue that we're having is that are there enough private sector developers in Saudi Arabia with the professional capability to take on such a high challenge project as an affordable housing project? You see, when I build a market rate project, I have a lot more buffer in my profit margin. When I'm capped at what I can sell my unit at, I have to be super efficient because my profit margins are inherently so much lower. So now, is there a potential to provide a training program or some sort of a real estate institute that will help the private sector developers, especially the small and medium enterprises, which is really the driving engine of any economy, and get them to become specialized affordable housing developers? They need a lot of hand-holding. They can't do it now because they don't have access to the funding. They don't have the professional capabilities. You're talking about new construction technologies. That's a great thing. If the developer doesn't understand how to utilize that, the project will fail. So I think that's really the critical thing, is how are we going to deliver this housing? And once that is said, then we have to put programs in place that enable whatever development delivery business model is selected by the government, because it cannot be government builds everything. It is just too high of a quantum to achieve that.
It's a very interesting point made there, and I think that also brings us to a discussion about how it's not just awareness for people, but it was also awareness for stakeholders and developers to understand how can they tap on these opportunities better. And we will be coming back to what you said, Kaveh, about private sector's involvement. But before that, there is a quick fact that I would like to mention here. So to resolve the affordable housing challenge faced by its population, Saudi Arabia's Ministry of Housing Infrastructure program was launched by the ministry, which is aimed at providing 500,000 housing units throughout the kingdom at a planned cost of roughly 500 billion Saudi riyals. Now, coming to you, Fouad, I know you've been aggressively working on the infrastructure program alongside the ministry. Tell us, what was the journey like? How did Parsons get involved in this project? And what kind of successes have you achieved till now?
Well, again, back in 2011, and right after the establishment of the Ministry of Housing at that time, right after that, they had a package for consultants to work on creating more infrastructure land. And therefore, like any other consultants, we bid on the job, and we were the low bidder, and we started the projects. At that time, our scope was to do studies, master planning, designs, and construction supervision. The model back then was for the government to be the contractor in a way. Of course, as we said later on, this model and strategy changed because they cannot be just the contractor with all this volume. And so we supported the ministry in that. We had 11 different sites across Saudi Arabia, ranging from North Tabuk to Khamis South to Jeddah and Medina, all the way east to Dammam, Qatif, and Riyadh and Kharj. So we did the designs, the master planning. Of course, we assisted the ministry in reviewing contractors, doing evaluation. Those contractors came on board, tendered. Of course, according to the Ministry of Finance, the lowest got the job. And it's not always it's a good thing sometimes. But this is the regulation requirements, and those we work with those contractors. We are the designers and we are the construction supervision. We worked with the authorities in terms of approvals and NOCs. We supported the ministry, and we've been on this program for 10 years now, and we're almost at the end of it, basically, in terms of contract. All these projects already handed over to the client, and therefore the client brought developers to develop on these infrastructure land, fully infrastructure land, and you can see some of those examples all over Saudi Arabia. Again, we are one consultant out of many that are doing the same thing. At the same time, during our journey with the ministry, we found there are needs for training. We worked with the ministry to train them. We provided them with manuals and processes and procedures according to best practices and international standards. And then we work along the line. We provided supportive PMO office with them, helped them with all these. We had an engineering team that was reviewing drawings and other things. We provided technical support to the branches. At some point in time, they were trying to activate the branches of the ministry to take role in managing the project in their regions, in their areas. So there's a lot of good things happening until we came into 2016-17, where the new minister came on board, and he had a strategy that as we see, helped a lot push the housing into where we are right now. And actually they exceeded their targets of 2020 to have 60% ownership at 62%. That's all the way back from before 2016, when they had around 47-48% home ownership. Of course, they still have another 8, 9, 10 years to come that they have to keep up that pace and find other solutions to keep up with that. I agree with what he says. You cannot keep up. You expect another million housing to be in the market. How are you going to do that in that time, other than being creative and thinking outside the box and see what other countries and benchmarking with other cities in order to do that?
Do you think, Kaveh, that going out of the box and thinking creatively will probably provide a respite in the future when it comes to the affordable housing challenge?
Yes, I think that I'll give you one example of something that could potentially work in Saudi. So in nearly all Western cities, major Western cities, if a private sector developer gets any government incentive at all, or develops within a high value area, they are required to provide 20% of their units as affordable. We call this the 80-20 rule. Now what this does is this creates mixed income communities and allows the private sector developer to basically utilize the profit from the 80% of the market rate units to then subsidize this 20%. Now, to caveat, we're not talking about mixing ultra high net worth with the bottom of the income chart. However, if I'm selling, let's say, townhomes at 1.2 million at that income bracket, and then I offer 20% at 800,000, these income brackets are not so far apart. They probably can live together. We don't want to mix the uber rich with the no, but in this middle range it can. In order to execute that program, the government can give very simple incentives, such as increased FAR or density, I mean, assuming the utilities work. They can give other incentives, such as interest-free construction loans. This business model in the West has worked very well to the point that in certain cities, they now require all private sector developers to have an 80-20 appropriation. And this at least will alleviate that portion of the affordable housing, which is sort of at the upper end of the poor, if you want to call it, so upper lower income, let's say. At least for that tranche, this 80-20 rule has worked very well. It's worked well in all European and American cities. Perhaps that's something that could be considered here as an example of a creative solution that would allow the private sector to participate in the affordable housing game without asking them to lower their profits so much that they just cannot compete.
Right. But then talking about private sector's involvement, in the affordable housing market, it is also important to understand at this point that traditionally government-built models have been the ones that are chosen, and you just mentioned that a while ago. And it is not just in Saudi, across the world this is what is adopted. But we've seen there have been unintended negative results when it comes to this model. So before we understand how the private sector could be involved, could you tell us about why these models have had issues, especially in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the government development delivery model has several key weaknesses, and this has been seen in, again, many international examples. The first is that inherently government is less efficient than the private sector. Procurement processes, length of time, which means your construction cost increases. This is true everywhere in the world. The second thing is that the speed to market and the rate at which you can adjust for different market parameters, the flexibility of a government organization is always less than a private sector organization. So this is the second issue. And the third issue is that when you clump together, you have, government typically wants to build at scale.
Yeah.
But if you're going to have, thousands and thousands of units, which are all at the lower income band, you are then unintentionally creating a low-income pocket within your city, you see, as opposed to trying to spread it out a little bit so that you don't clump everybody together, and then that creates negative social repercussions. And these are things that we've seen also in the Western countries. So that's why in international examples they've moved away as much as possible from the government fund and deliver model to some of these other models.
That's exciting to know about what you just mentioned about the three reasons, why this model isn't working. But coming to you, Fouad, I know there are a lot of cost implications when it comes to a government-built model as well. And since Parsons is a consultant, having worked on this program for the past 10 years, what are some of the complications that you have, worked on trying to resolve when you are working on the infrastructure program?
I agree with him on the 80-20 rule, and I remember back then when they first introduced the developer and the private sector to come in, and they were doing workshops and meetings to motivate them to come and be part of the ministry vision at that time. A lot of the 80-20 was also discussed at that time, whereby a developer will come in, you take a piece of, you take that land owned by the ministry. They may give him the front lot where the commercial are so he can benefit from it. And then in return, or they may increase the FAR as you stated, and in return he can provide 20%, 15%, whatever the agreement of affordable housing. And therefore you have this mix. And again, you don't want to have all this in one place. You want to mix it with the middle income and high income to create that community and help that whole system to work together.
But do you think that when it comes to the 80-20, market that we're talking about, what Kaveh just said and you spoke about, do you think that kind of model will be helpful for Saudi affordable housing market as well? And what do you think will be some of the challenges that the sector will see when they are adopting that model?
I think it will be challenging. Again, there's a lot of demand, and you need to find solutions to that. So you need to try everything that can help produce those housing. Make sure that the private sector is already in line with the vision to make sure they support the government into that. For a long time, the private sector was hesitant to come and invest and do. They're waiting to see what's going to happen and whether they can do. Obviously, with a lot of the legislative reforms, the ministry created an ecosystem for everybody to come in and do business and make money out of it. Of course, in addition to that, the ministry had to work with banks to work on mortgages and loans and certain agreements so they can benefit, because if nobody can afford to pay cash for everything, following Western models where they can facilitate payment, that partnership helped a lot into the confidence to come in. However, you still have a lot of small contractors or developers that they may build 2, 3, 5 units. That's all their capacities, and this is what they know. We go back again to the training, the education, maybe putting those small ones under somebody's bigger where they can learn from. Ultimately, those guys will be, after 10, 15 years, they become medium size and large size. They have the experience, they have the expertise in terms of delivery, and they can help the economy. They can even venture into internationally to other countries to help based on their experience. So there's a lot of, from those challenges, you create positives, you created opportunities for everybody to work together and help create that housing requirements or housing.
Yeah, I think it also takes us to the conversation about how private sector is now more involved when it comes to utility scale projects, whether it is desalination plants as well as, other, seawater, wastewater plants as well. So I think it is also a time on how the housing market could tap on, as you said, the expertise of the private sector. And talking about the expertise of private sector, Kaveh, I would like to come to you. I know Knight Frank released the Affordable Housing Challenge report earlier this year, and you spoke to Construction Week at that time, and you told us about how a constructive role public-private partnerships, PPPs here, could play, and they could come in the picture and solve the problem. Would you like to talk to us about this report and also about how the private sector could now enter the picture and try to resolve the problem?
Yes, absolutely. I think that the critical thing again is to understand, what is the business model behind it, and the private sector will only enter the affordable housing game in mass if there is some way that they can make a profit, because they are in the end a private sector developer. One thing that could potentially be explored that has been very successful in Western markets is a tax credit program. Now, the way the affordable housing tax credit works, and this is really only for your very large developers, but ironically, they're the ones that are, as of right now, until we get the education of the estimate, they're the ones that have the capability to deliver. Now, I think on the first panel, one of the gentlemen was saying that we have a very simplified tax regimen in Saudi Arabia. Fair enough. But we still have a 15% VAT, and that's not a small amount. So imagine if you go to a major developer and you say, you are developing 5 high-rise towers here. We will exempt you from VAT if you take half of that money and you invest it here in affordable housing, or 75%, whatever it is. This is the primary funding mechanism for affordable housing in Western markets. A private sector developer gets a tax credit offset on their private development if they contribute to an affordable housing development. And also, if you think about it, as a developer or contractor, I can get things done at cost, right? Because I'm already developing. So especially if I can develop something on the same site, there's economies of scale with my architect, with my contractor, et cetera, et cetera. So this is one way that you really need to, I guess the point is you have to entice the private sector. You have to sit down with them and really understand what are their needs, what are their challenges, and create a program that draws them in. You cannot push the private sector into the affordable housing game. You have to pull them in. So this is one form of a sort of PPP partnership that could be done. And I think that the last point I'll make is that, real estate is a local game. And of course you must have a national affordable housing policy. But as the old adage says, think global and act local, the same must be true of affordable housing. The real estate market dynamics in Yanbu are completely different than Riyadh. To build an affordable housing project in Yanbu or Taif is a completely different set of challenges than in Riyadh. So you cannot apply the same methodology across the entire kingdom without accounting for local market dynamics. So there has to be a filtering of national policy level objectives into local real estate dynamics, and then you will see again the private sector step in because they feel like, okay, the commercial realities of my business are being taken into account by this government program.
That's exciting to know about how you mentioned on, changing the dynamics. And I am sure that many of us sitting here and obviously many others who are watching us through the live broadcast would also agree that it is time that we change the dynamics and understand, how we can have a common platform to see how we can solve the challenges associated with the affordable housing market. Now that brings me towards the end of our discussions, and as we know, and we cannot agree more, that we are charting successes definitely in the affordable housing market, but there is a lot of work that needs to be done here. And on that note, I would like to hear your final words on, how has the success rate been when it comes to the affordable housing market? And do you think we are going, from here on, are we going on a better path?
I think again we go back to we need to support the strategy in order to achieve the goals. In order to do that, you cannot go with the traditional, let's say traditional housing, building a house. Okay, it takes a lot of labor. It creates a lot of waste. It doesn't give you the mass that we're talking about. To give that mass, you need to go into standardization. Need to go into using technology. Everybody knows 3D printing is taking a lot of buzz lately. I personally think it's not there yet, personally. I think it needs a little bit more development. I know China has been pushing hard, spending millions and hundred millions to develop the technology. I know the States is the same thing, competing. Who's going to get the best 3D printer? The issue of the challenges of, okay, we don't want to print just one-story house, we want to go print a building. Okay, so technology right now goes up to 4 floors, for example. What's next, and so forth. The materials, the location where this is going to be happening, remote areas versus cities, how you take advantage of that. So with that technology, in addition to, I believe you have to go into other construction type like modular construction, where it's all done in a controlled environment. Therefore, they can have a lot of production, better quality, safer environment, safer for the employees, less waste, all that good stuff that goes with it. They have to create in things like that creatively to produce the mass. And with the mass, you get the price to go down, becomes cheaper, more affordable. Everybody makes money on it. The goals are met and things like that. So I think everybody is going toward that. We must use technology. That's the only way in order to reach the goals that we're looking for. I think also the Ministry of Housing already tried the 3D printing. There's already a model done in one of our projects in Riyadh. They printed a 3 building. It came to be acceptable. It was a few years back. I know the technology is better now in terms of finishes and smoothness of the walls and this. I think also we need to go into a manufacturing type thinking and concept. It's like you manufacture cars. You have to have assembly lines. You have to have parts that is manufactured and built with a certain quality at certain speed. However, those parts needs to work together, not only on one model, because if it works on one model, you lose money. The same parts can work on different concepts, different models that you can use in different building types, different configurations, and so forth. So it becomes cheap, it becomes good quality. Of course, the training and the understanding goes behind it, how to put it together. And I think that manufacturing process is important to now apply it to housing versus the old traditional way of, you pour a concrete and you put a beam and you fill it with CMU blocks and you do the rest of that. I think that the future is for these type of things in order to achieve the mass and have the affordable. I personally very optimistic. I think there's a lot of good things happening. A little bit of guidance, a little bit of benchmarking, a little bit of tweaking can help improve to reach by 2030 to the 70% home ownership. Again, we're not far from it already. I mean, right now, Saudi is 62%, the States is 66%,
That's
Japan is 61%. You know, you go to UAE, maybe a little bit more at 80%, but currently what Saudi Arabia at 62% is a very good number. And I think getting it up to 70 and 75 will be right up there with the top developed countries in terms of home ownership. And that's something everybody needs to be proud of.
Very interesting points there. Kaveh, what are your final thoughts, and would you also agree with what Fouad just mentioned about a mass production model that can obviously transform the way the affordable housing market is looking at right now?
Yeah, definitely fully agree. The mass production model would be great. And also, I think just taking a step back, when we look at the quantum of the challenge that Saudi Arabia was faced with and identified a few years ago, what they've delivered so far has been astounding. We just have to realize that the future challenge is similarly huge. You see what I'm saying? So I don't know anywhere in the world that has developed this much affordable housing in such a short amount of time. It's amazing. And everybody involved, all the stakeholders from the government down, should be applauded for that. Fortunately or unfortunately, you have some, huge majority of the population under age 30, household size reduces. So guess what? This challenge is going to continue. So as great as we've done, the horizon is an even bigger challenge. And I think, as Fouad said, all the learning that's taken place in the past few years, now we have to think about, okay, these were sort of the pilot projects. Here's what worked, here's what didn't work. We achieved this amount. Now to really achieve the long-term goal for the next 10, 15 years, what are some of the innovations we can bring?
Yeah. While we wrap this panel discussion, gentlemen, I think from here on we are taking a very positive note on how applauding work has Saudi Arabia been doing in terms of the housing market. But it also leads us to a point that it is now time for us to adopt technology and look at the transformative role that technology is going to play in the future. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on the panel discussion today. It was wonderful having you with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there are always challenges on the road, aren't there? But initiatives such as the Ministry of Housing Infrastructure Program is a beacon of hope in the end of the Affordable Housing Challenge tunnel. And on that note, I would now like to move on to our next panel discussion, where we will be looking into the design and modular construction of buildings in Saudi Arabia. To start this conversation, I would like to invite our panelists for this panel discussion. So please put your hands together for our first panelist, Waleed Khaled, Regional Sales Director at Losberger, Boer. Waleed has delivered turnkey modular construction and temporary structure solutions throughout the MENA region, with a particular focus on the UAE and Saudi Arabia markets. Please put your hands together for Waleed, ladies and gentlemen. Also joining us on the panel discussion is Ihab Ramlawi, Managing Director and co-founder of DUPOD. Ihab is an accomplished visionary with a 27-year track record in developing and leading successful business entities. Please put your hands together for Ihab, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry about the delay.
No problem. Well, thank you for your time today, gentlemen. It's a pleasure to have you on our last panel discussion of the Leaders in Construction KSA Summit. Now, let's take this conversation, let's get the conversation started, and let's look at what it is for modular construction in the Saudi Arabia market. We know that historically, modular construction has always been used for short-term values, and when it comes to, corporate events, concerts, music events and festivals. But now that scenario has changed completely, and modular construction has seen leaps of improvement and successes when it comes to its adoption, especially in Saudi Arabia. So now we want to understand from you, as modular construction continues to gain more traction in Saudi Arabia, what are some of the opportunities and challenges that you have witnessed in the sector as stakeholders who are working so closely with bigger companies in the region? Let's start with you first, Waleed. Would you like to give us your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. As you said, by history, modular construction has been very well known, and it has been developing from a phase to another. I think as an international company with a history of more than 100 years, we set an example for ourselves and even for the industry. From starting with a simple fabric tent back in 100 years back, and now we can construct the multi-floor building up to 36 floors. That itself sets the example for how the industry or the modular construction has been developing through years. Researches, development, engineering, technology, and so on, has been definitely going on a fast track. Region, and especially Saudi Arabia, with the majority of the projects happening, especially for event industry, which we are taking big part of it as one of the divisions that we run. We have been seeing multiple projects happening at the same time with a very tight timelines. The client's still asking for high standard of quality of designs and delivery and finishes, which modular construction has been also going aligned with this kind of developing to reach the expectation of the client.
That's very interesting to know. And I think it is also important here, like how you mentioned, the transformative role that modular construction has played in Saudi Arabia's market. That brings me to you, Ihab. I want to understand, when it comes to the changes that the sector has witnessed and the way it is shaping the construction sector in Saudi Arabia, what are some of the transformative roles that you have witnessed, as someone who's closely working with clients, in the modular sector?
Well, design has been always a challenge when it comes to modular construction. And that is because of the lack of awareness, because of the lack of regularities. There is no regulations that actually in place for the modular construction. And that has been always a challenge that we worked against. In the group we have at Amana, we took it as a responsibility to increase the awareness in the modular construction benefits since 2012. And we have worked with all construction stakeholders. We have worked with consultants. We have worked in many contractors, and we have tried to show them what are the benefits that comes in within the construction using modular construction methods. Now, I must say that the Saudi government is a frontier when it comes to increasing the awareness in modular construction. And we are so excited about this because I think this is a very, very important role that will align very well with the agenda to increase the local content in the kingdom. Today, you are shifting all construction activities to a controlled environment. Like my colleague just said now, Mr. Fouad, you are going to a process.
Yeah.
And basically, when you go to a process, you are going to an assembly line that is broken down into zones. And when you work in such a controlled environment, you can actually integrate the local content, the local resources, and use local talent. This is very, very important today, as we are into the construction industry, but we notice that modular construction can attract more Saudi talent into it. Another factor we think, and that came throughout the experience, early engagement is very important in the initial stages of the project.
Yeah.
And that is very, very, very essential to the success of the project. We have to integrate with the developer, we have to integrate with the consultant, we have to educate them to make use of modular construction, in general, and that is essential.
Yeah, and I think everyone sitting here would also agree that early engagement is very key to the success of a project. And if I may, this was also a very common sentiment that was shared by our panelists during the Leaders in Construction UAE last week. Now, talking about the factors that you just mentioned, Ihab, I would like to come to you, Waleed. And I know Losberger Boer has had many successes in the modular construction sector in Saudi. But what are some of the growth factors that has helped you? Does it also include local content and localization?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, I agree with all points mentioned now. Local talent has to be discovered. Knowledge has to be passed. And we also took part of passing this kind of knowledge, the expertise that we have from international markets, bringing the different configuration and to align that with the client expectation for the project. There was a set mind for what to be accepted and expected from a modular construction. I would say 7-8 years ago, like my colleague said here, to 2012, it was very limited expectation to cabins or to site offices, to that kind of configuration. So passing the knowledge to the client and let him know that there are endless, I would say endless possibilities from modular construction can be achieved to meet the requirement of the project, from speed, from quality, from waste management, from all of that is definitely a good approach from modular construction. And local utilization is a good example to that as well. Saudi is a big market.
Yeah.
The knowledge has been essential, but they have also a lot of potential. The workshops around the country, skilled labor or skilled workforce is available. Having that also with international expertise, which we brought to the market, had helped a lot. And we had that in early stage with clients, government entities, private houses, and all of that helped us a lot within the last, I would say, 10 years in the country.
Yeah, what would you like to say about what Waleed just mentioned? Do you think that there is enough expertise when it comes to the modular construction market in Saudi Arabia?
Well, that is one of the biggest challenges that we have. And it's not only Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
In the whole sector is new worldwide. So if you want to recruit talent into modular construction, it's always a challenge. And once you are transforming from a construction environment to a manufacturing environment, over here you are bridging different industries with mixed talents that comes in from manufacturing and construction. And that is pretty much unique. I've studied a lot of experiences that have been done in many other countries like Singapore, and it was very, very successful. And that has been done through founding training facilities for people. And this is very, 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 very important, because this is the only way to engage local talent. We have to train them, we have to get them educated, and that could be a solution to this problem that is occurring nowadays.
Don't you think that an openness in the mindset of people is also something that will help, towards creating this change and creating more awareness about the modular construction sector?
Today, as we are saying, we are moving to a manufacturing environment. Manufacturing environment is an assembly line that is working in a controlled environment. So over here, we're talking about a completely different industry that could attract a different caliber of talent. We are in our group working in the construction field and in the modular construction field. And we're working in Saudi. And we know that it is very hard to bring talent to the construction field because it is not welcoming as much for the local talent to work in an open site environment, considering the harsh environment that we have today. Yet, when we are working in a factory environment, we believe that this will bring in the talent that we want, will bring in smart, intelligent people who are interested in technology, and will also include female content. We don't see it we see it as a possibility. Why not? And I think the new mindset of the youth today are welcoming to such ideas, and they are well educated that this is the future, and we want to be part of the future.
Well, I think that's a common sentiment that all of us will share. You know, even when I was having a discussion outside, just before we started off the panel discussion, it was that we need more local talent in the Saudi market, and it just doesn't go to the modular construction industry, but it also is important for the construction sector as a whole. Now, coming back to you, Waleed, I know Losberger the Boer has been working on some amazing projects in Saudi Arabia. I want to understand from you, what are these projects and how are you approaching such projects in Saudi Arabia compared to the other markets that you excel in?
As I mentioned, we have two different divisions in Losberger de Boer. We have the events and we have the commercial projects. Events is taking care of all the mega, or I would say medium-sized to mega-size events, whether it's a sport, entertainment, and the like. We executed many projects here in Saudi Arabia, starting from Qiddiya opening ceremony, down to Formula E twice, Saudi Cup, and different ones as well. Commercial solution, we have been also catering those projects from our off-the-shelf stock availability, which it's a good range. It's actually a huge range of stock availability for different configuration and different products. And also our bespoke designing for a special project requirement. Both elements has helped us to deliver also a semi-permanent to permanent installation or application, I would say, for, again, sports, entertainment, tourism, museum, even down to warehousing solution. So that set also a different example to us and to the market, what could modular construction can achieve. Formula E, as an example, building a pit lane of 200 meter length, triple deck in less than 20 days, that's an achievement for modular construction, which, if you think about it from conventional point of view, it's unachievable. So that kind of availability of stock, modularity, sustainability of the material, the knowledge, the expertise, and I would say we did found a lot of good talents in the market, in the Saudi local market, Saudis and non-Saudis. They are aware about the technology of the modular. They are already have some expertise internationally or locally, and they need more knowledge, they need more training, and that would help a lot, for sure.
Yeah. And I think we would also agree at a point that sizable achievements is what modular construction is aiming for, and that is what it has already achieved. And that brings me to my next question, that would be to you, Ihab, about volumetric construction when it comes to residential as well as hospitality projects. So I would like to know from you, how is DUPOD working with its clients, to meet both the volume and size?
Well, within the group, we have DUBOX and DUPOD. So DUBOX comes in to cater for a full project using volumetric construction. And in DUBOX, we were able to manufacture pre-finished, pre-assembled boxes in a factory environment, ship it to site, assemble it, and plug it in together, and this is where we are forming a full building. Now that was a solution for projects like the Red Sea project, with a huge constraint when it comes to the environmental aspect. It's a remote site where you don't have access to workers. So basically, DUPOD have set up a facility that in Saudi Arabia, not too far from the site, and all the boxes were manufactured in that facility itself. I can say 80 to 90% of the whole construction activities has been done in this facility, shipped to site, assembled, and formed the whole construction for the project. Now, working in this mentality will enable you to cater for tight schedule, for scalability. These projects had demanding schedules and very, very, very constrained in terms of time, in terms of specifications and requirements. And it was a great example that modular construction is the right solution for such projects. On the other hand, we have created DUPOD, and DUPOD basically came in with a different role, and that is to enable the construction industry. We have realized that DUPOD caters for a full project, yet we cannot cater for all projects. That is impossible. So what we did is basically we have created a company that comes in and work with the construction stakeholders. Today in DUPOD, we are able to create products such as bathroom pods, kitchen pods, rooms that can be integrated in a construction industry. This is very, very important because we need to work with the whole construction industry, and we need to enable them to access the benefits of the modular construction. And with that, you are able to achieve the scalability that you are targeting.
Right, and I think about the scalability of the project, it is also important to understand that if it weren't for a controlled environment where you are creating these pods and the projects, it wouldn't have been possible. And it also is important that you collaborate with your clients at the same time so they are in the same picture. Would you agree with that, Waleed?
Yeah, definitely. Controlled environment helps a lot, not only for the component which has to be produced, it also helps other contractors on site to resume with their activities and their scope of work without any interruption, and that limit also the wastage on site for everyone. So definitely it helps a lot, for sure.
Yeah, that's very interesting to know. And now we know that, everyone would collectively also agree to this point that, compared with the conventional way of constructing, modular construction has helped us, open our mindsets to, how the industry could be approached differently. And I think this was also something that Losberger de Boer did while completing the Jeddah Superdome project, which was a milestone in itself. And why I say this is because you completed the project during such challenging times last year. Would you like to talk to us about how collaboration also played a very important role, when completing this project?
Yeah, it was vital. Jeddah Superdome was a quick idea, came from the client, and it was actually went through very fast approvals. Right after the signing of the contracts, COVID hits, and all the challenges started to accumulate from logistic point of view to bringing the right expertise, to bringing the right team, which we normally deploy to such a project. Actually, the project itself was one of a kind, and it's first to be seen in the region. It's 210-meter diameter dome with very stringent standards. So one of the things that we did is to mitigate those challenges by building an on-site facility to produce the material of the project. So instead of waiting for our manufacturers in Europe or in US to produce that and then ship it down to Saudi, we installed the manufacturer itself on site, and that helped a lot and reduces our timeline big time. Collaborating with the client, with the government guidelines and the situation, the lockdown periods and all of that, we have been successful to deliver it even 1 week before deadline, after the revised schedule for sure, because it has been also challenging from supplier chain, which we change it from time to time based on the situation and the lockdown in different countries. So it has been a milestone. It has been going through consistent, robust training to everyone on site, from one side to complete the project, on the other side to be adhering to the situation that we are all facing. So it has been a remarkable milestone, I would say, for sure.
I think it surely is an impressive feat, Waleed. And what more would you ask for than a Guinness World Records title for the Jeddah Superdome?
Yeah.
Coming to you, Ihab, I know you are also working, as you mentioned, on the Red Sea project. Can you tell us what were some of the challenges that you faced, when you were delivering this project, and how did you overcome these challenges?
As I mentioned just now, project, when it comes to time, when it comes to duration, and now what we have done is basically we realized from the beginning that is when it comes to construction. It is, I think. What we have done is we broke it into 3 teams.
Okay.
We have Amana as the construction company, and Amana came in as the company who has executed the infrastructure work. And then DUPOD, we have created a facility over here in Saudi Arabia to cater for the full rooms. On the other hand, DUPOD came in and delivered the wet areas within these boxes. So basically, what we have done is broken down the construction into parallel activities. And modular construction is about parallel construction. And the whole idea is to shorten the time frame. Instead of working this way, we're working in parallel. And when you work in parallel, you're able to mitigate the constraints when it comes to time. Another aspect is basically the design aspect. And herein, we bring in the collaboration part.
Yeah.
We have been using technology for a long time. We are into BIM environment. And that was a success factor that we actually attribute to over here in this project. It comes in from the DNA that was integrated in the group itself. Now, if you are working in a BIM environment, the 3 parties can collaborate together. Over here, we are able to integrate designs together and ensure that there are no clashes. There is no rework over here. You're having accuracy, and you are able to work in an open cloud-based environment that can actually save time. This is an amazing tool that should be used today, and a great example for using technology in construction. And that was, again, an important factor that made us counter these challenges in these projects.
And I think here I would like to mention what Costa has mentioned in our second panel discussion about entertainment projects, that technology adoption is a key, not just for the construction sector as we know, but for modular construction sector as well, because that leads us to reducing wastage as well as reducing the environmental impact. And that takes me to my next question and understanding how the modular construction sector is helping achieve sustainability goals of Vision 2030 agenda. Let's start with you first, Waleed. How is Losberger approaching sustainability when it comes to modular construction in Saudi?
We manufacture majority of our material in our factories back in Europe, or even here in Saudi when it's required. Having those material already ready to be used, whether for a short-term temporary installation or a long-term permanent installation, when it's required to be dismantled as an example, no wastage will be left behind. So there is zero wastage after the dismantle phase. During the construction itself, it's very limited extra component to be used. It's already ready material, ready profiles, the machinery on site, and it's only the installation of the component. So there is limited wastage to that as well. We see the sustainability also from the operation side of the project, how fast the client can commercialize his project.
Yeah.
Has a sustainable element into it, from inception to execution. That's very important to take in consideration sustainability and how fast he can really have the revenue back or ROI back from the investment has been made. That I think it's a good sustainability element could be considered from modular construction as well, which is speed as a driving force is the key answer is modular construction, because again, the limitless configuration, the technology that always developing day by day now is a key answer to the requirement of the tight timelines that we always see in the region and especially here in Saudi.
Yeah, very well said there, Waleed. And I think it is important, as you said, you know, starting from the inception to the execution stage is where you should be approaching sustainability on, and not just anywhere. So coming on to you, Ihab, and understanding about sustainability, the Red Sea project obviously focuses on this rigorously, and I'm sure it must have also been challenging for, you know, DUPOD to make sure that when you are delivering the project, you are also adhering to the sustainable goals. What was it like for the company?
There were different aspects. One aspect is about the design aspect,
Yeah.
that you have to comply with sustainability factors. And these are requirements when it comes to the design is sustainable in terms of using material that are sustainable. Like, for example, when it comes to the bathrooms, all the taps, everything, all the fixtures were carefully selected to be actually sustainable with a lot of attention to water preservation. The project in general, because it's fabricated off-site, was delivering a sustainable factor much more than attributed to the project itself. Why? Because the environmental aspect of the project was, you know, very, 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 very important. Over here, they're trying to protect the environment, and they don't want any site disturbance. And when we are fabricating everything off-site, or 80 to 90% of the activities are done off-site to be accurate, we are reducing a lot of site activities. And with that, we are minimizing the site destruction that will actually cause any impact to the environment that they were taking. So today we are studying other options where we are proposing, and we see the importance in such projects where water preservation is very important. So we are testing a model where we are inserting meters in our bathrooms. These meters will track and control the consumption of water. This is a great example of implementing IoT and technology within modular construction. I think this is very, very important in such projects. Considering its hospitality, considering the agenda that comes in, considering many, many factors today that are actually driven by the government. And that's how we have taken it.
Yeah, very interesting to know that. And also I would like to mention here that, you know, we shouldn't be fearing away from adopting technology. I mean, it is only helping to transform the industry and ensure that we are building better homes as well as better commercial projects and properties as well. That brings me down to my last question. I want to know from you both your final thoughts on, do you think that the modular construction sector is going futuristic, and do you think that Saudi Arabia is leaping ahead when it comes to the modular construction adoption in the Middle East. Let's start with you first, Waleed.
There is no doubt that Saudi government is embracing futuristic methods and ideas, whether it's for developing existing cities like Riyadh or creating new cities like Red Sea and Neom. All the available and existing technology and even the new one to come is to be embraced for this transition, especially in Saudi. If you see the look and feel of a modular construction 10, 20 years ago, and you look to it now, it's totally different.
Yeah.
And it's going into a different phase as well now because of technology and because of the demands coming from the clients and the requirement, whether for the outlook or the inside component, whether for fit out or operation requirement. So it's definitely going to futuristic, and we have to embrace that as being in the industry and being leaders in the industry. We have to cope up with that with all researches and development, applying the right knowledge, applying the right or bringing in the right calibers and mindsets to it, and keep always updating ourselves with whatever is happening, because it will never stop here. It will definitely develop for sure.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And do you think, Ihab, is DUPOD also, looking at the futuristic aspect of modular construction, and how are you embracing that at your company?
We are barely scratching the surface. We're just in the beginning. Now, Henry Ford came up with the process assembly in 1913 in the automotive. And that was key to mass manufacturing. Today, automotive is run by robotics. What we have noticed when you are working in a processed environment, you have created the perfect environment to integrate technology. Why? Because in an open construction site, and I have been working in the construction field for the best times of my life, it is very, very hard to integrate technology, considering the site activities that does not work in process. Okay, so when you are working in a processed environment, in a zoned environment, integrating technology, over here you're able to integrate BIM with ERP solutions, creating a vertical integration in the system itself. You're able to control your supply chain. You don't need to pile up the material. You are able to design for manufacturing assembly, and you're saving a lot when it comes to your consumption of the material itself. And you're able to integrate IoT. The sensors works perfectly in a factory environment. And that is a perfect way to track the activities in the factory. This is the environment where you can increase productivity. And today, the whole thing is about productivity. We want to increase productivity. We want more efficiency. And over here, you have created the right environment for it. I think there is a lot of talk about integrating robotics into modular construction. I think it will come there. But yet, you have to have the right atmosphere, right infrastructure before you go to that step. You need to know your drivers, your cost drivers, how much efficiency you have, and basically where are you able to integrate robotics? Is it efficient? Is it cost effective or not? So we are at that stage today, and we are creating that proper environment to integrate technology. And I think you will see it soon, and especially in Saudi Arabia, because they are driving a huge force towards modular construction and innovation, that you will see robotics in modular construction.
Very exciting times there for the modular construction sector in Saudi Arabia, I think. And I also believe at this point that the rest of the Middle East will also take lessons from how Saudi is excelling in the modular construction market. On that note, I would like to wrap our discussion today and also wrap our event this morning. And thank you so much for joining us, Waleed and Ihab. It was really interesting to know how modular construction is changing the landscape of Saudi Arabia's construction sector as a whole. Thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you for arranging this.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.
Wow, that was a really exciting panel about modular construction. I am really thrilled to know how it can change the landscape of not just the construction sector, but also make us realize how we can include local talent into the market through the opportunities that we have there. Now, as we call it a day with some really power-packed panel discussions and a very exciting keynote speech today, I would like to thank you all for joining us once again physically at the Hilton Riyadh Hotel and Residences and virtually to all our viewers there. We are absolutely elated to have brought this conference to you. Please make sure that you send us any of your feedbacks and questions once again to cwcontact@itp.com, and we will make sure that we get back to you as soon as possible with our responses. On that note, let's give a big round of applause to all our panelists and our keynote speaker this morning, ladies and gentlemen. And at this point, let's not also forget to thank our sponsors, without whose support we wouldn't have been possible to bring this event to you today. Please put your hands together once again for our platinum sponsor, Al Bawani, legal partner, Reed Smith, gold sponsor, Parsons, and silver sponsors, Hamad and Al Mahedar Law Firm. I hope that you've all enjoyed your networking opportunities throughout the panel discussion and our conference. Please make sure you tune in again, once again, on our YouTube channel, as well as our social media pages to follow all the traction that we have gained on the Leaders in Construction KSA Summit. I will see you next year once again for the Leaders in Construction KSA Summit 2022. And I'm sure that next year's event will be more exciting and power-packed than what we had presented this year. Thank you once again, everyone. We will see you soon.